Now, Serbia is a country of just over 7 million people, which aspires to join the European Union. And next month, it will hold elections to pick a new president. The current Prime Minister, Aleksandar Vučić, is the front-runner out of the 9 candidates. Last week, one opinion poll put him on 52% of the vote. As ever, the economy is a prominent issue and things are looking good. On Monday, the International Monetary Fund concluded that the outlook is positive, with growth projected at 3% in 2017. Well, with me now is Vladimir Krulj, who's Serbia's chief economist for the EU negotiation process. Thanks very much for coming in. So, on the face of it, things are looking very positive for Serbia. But the IMF says that a lot more needs to be done to reach those targets, reforming health, reforming the tax systems and reforming those state-owned enterprises where there is an awful lot of capacity and they're losing money.
Well, firstly, IMF said that the IMF chief bureau said from Belgrade it's probably in all arrangement in recent history this was one of the most successful. Why? Because Serbia managed to have a budget surplus in last year. Because Serbia is this year planned basically a fiscal deficit to 1.7%, which just to mention is basically sometimes very hard to be attainable by the EU full member states. Why? Because Serbia is making the economic growth forecasted for the next couple of years on the level between 3 and 4%. And why? Because Serbia, the whole core of the Mr. Vučić political platform is based around the clear economic goals.
However, you're not meeting those reform goals that the IMF have clearly put out there. And if you don't, then that 1.3 billion euros in help that you kept in reserve to keep borrowing costs low could be at risk, couldn't it?
It's always a risk, but just to maintain what I said, I mean, only last year the provision of economic growth in Serbia has been changed 3 times or better. So meaning that the first prognosis for Serbia forecast was like a 0.8%, then 1.5%, and now we're stabilizing, let's stabilizing on a level of 3%. This means if we keep on with this pace and what basically Mr. Vučić has stated several times, and what is the core of his political program, economic growth and economic benefit, there is no reason why not to perform as we did in the past 3 years. I would also like just to mention...
It is so crucial, though, for that process of those EU negotiations that you do get to grips with the reform of the state-owned companies, isn't it? Because otherwise you could be breaking EU competition law.
I just would like to say that basically privatization of state-owned companies was one of the key performances done by this administration, because in the past, from year 2000 to 2012, there have been continuous debates how to do it with the state-owned privatization of state-owned companies. This is actually the first government that put very clear deadline when to finish this process, and this process is well on the line.
It could be politically painful, though, couldn't it? Because obviously an awful lot of people are employed in these state-owned companies which need reform. How do you push through those reforms when perhaps the electorate aren't keen?
Well, I mean, Mr. Vučić is, for one thing, he was known of that he was taking moves not because they're easy, but because they're hard, you know. And he believes very strongly, and if you see basically the recent polls of Serbian citizens, everything he's doing regarding European Union, regarding the all reforms that need to be done, is basically supported by always 50% of Serbs. This means that Serbia is very strongly strategically dedicated to the European path, and for its own sake. I mean, because 2/3 of trade has been done with the European Union, 80% of total investment goes with the European Union, and unemployment basically dropped down by 60% on the last 2 years.
So that's the direction of travel. OK, thank you very much, Vladimir Krulj, Chief Economist for EU negotiations.
Thank you very much for inviting me.